As you know, October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That in itself was once a big accomplishment. Believe it or not, at one point, a public conversation about breast was unacceptable. In 1974, First Lady Betty Ford kicked off the movement by speaking publicly about her diagnosis and surgery, even when advised not to. It cleared the way for other high-profile people to share their journey over the decades. Oscar winner Kathy Bates and actress Julia Louis-Dreyfus had breast cancer. Beyonce's mom, Tina, was diagnosed with stage 1, and many fans were shocked when her dad, Matthew, was also diagnosed with breast cancer. And Oscar winner Angelina Jolie underwent a double mastectomy as a preventive measure because she had an increased genetic risk. Millions of people are diagnosed early with mammograms, and that's why the survival rate can be near 100% today. But what happens when imaging is financially out of reach? 40 years ago, our first guest made the connection between women who survived and thrived and women who are left battling some tough odds. She co-founded The Rose, where no woman was denied simply because she could not afford a mammogram. Dorothy Gibbons is about to retire, but what she started lives on forever. The Rose has helped over 1 million women to get screened, diagnosed, or treated. She joined us along with Courtney Clark, who was diagnosed in the middle of her pregnancy. Good morning, ladies.
Oh, good morning.
Okay, there is a lot to this 40 years here. But I want to start with Dorothy, for you, as a young lady in your earlier years, what did you know about breast cancer? Was it talked about?
Oh, no, never. I mean, it just wasn't. And I worked in a healthcare facility. I was in a hospital, but it wasn't one of the biggies for women. And it wasn't until Dixie Melillo came to Bayshore Hospital as a general surgeon, which, you know, back then, women, there weren't many women that were in medicine, fewer that were a general surgeon, and she just turned our whole little world upside down.
Yes, she did, and so did Rose Kushner. But you know, the thing was, you kept seeing women come in, and they would be diagnosed in late stages. So you're like, you made the connection. If they only knew sooner.
Right. I'd get this message. I'd get this call from Dixie on Friday afternoons who would say, "Bring your camera. I want to document this." And it would always be a woman whose cancer had gone outside their breast. Wow. And in that first year that we were trying to do all these, you know, education pieces and public talks and all that, we had 13 women come through like that. And it was always the same thing. There was no money, there was no insurance, they didn't know what they had, and they were sure they were dead anyway, so why do anything about it?
Wow,
all right. Sad.
The Rose, I never thought to ask you who the Rose was named after. I thought it was in reference to the beautiful pink rose flower, right? But instead, it has to do with you, Dr. Melillo, and Rose Kushner.
Yes, we met her in 1985, and we had met her at this convention and had a chance to have dinner with her. And of course, she was my idol. She had written Alternatives, and it was the first book for lay people.
She was an advocate, yeah.
Oh, yes.
Why me? What every woman should know about breast cancer to save her life.
Right. And she was a journalist for the Baltimore Sun, first female to cover Vietnam. So I mean, this was a major player, you know, in this world.
And she challenged Congress, even doing things like, why can't a mammogram be covered under insurance, right? But take us back to that time period where we wouldn't even say the word breast, but she talked about how women would go in for a biopsy and they'd be under anesthesia, and then some men would have a conversation about her breast, and she'd wake up with missing breasts.
That's true. She went in for her own biopsy in 1979, and the doctor said, well, it's not going to be anything, Rose. I guarantee you, you know, these things never are. But if it is, when we do your biopsy, we'll come out and ask Harvey, her husband, and go ahead and do your mastectomy. And she said, you know, now she had a mouth on her. That would, you know, and she said, what do you mean? You're not going to, these are my boobs. I'm going to be the one to do that. It was 16 surgeons later before she found someone that would let her wake up.
Wow,
and
someone who would take her decision into account.
Yes.
And one of the other things she talked about was like, you know, let's look for other alternatives instead of just lopping them off. Can we do things like tamoxifen or you know, a chemo, all that type of, but making it the woman's decision about her own body.
Right. And you know, when she met Dixie, and Dixie was going on and on about all of the education we were doing, you know, in Houston, Texas, and Rose said, Dixie, what are you doing with those women after you educate them? If you don't have access to care, you're not doing anything.
Right.
And then Dixie said, well, that's just it. You know, no one will do mammograms for people that don't have insurance. And, you know, Dixie's going on, and Rose kind of leaned into her space and said, Dixie, quit your pissing and moaning and get off your, we use duff in public, get off your duff and go start a nonprofit.
Yeah, and that nonprofit is the Rose.
Is
but here's
the
the
Rose.
deal. Oftentimes, the only time somebody could even access the mammogram was when there was presence of a lump, which, as we always say, once there's a lump.
It wasn't screening at all, not back then.
And now it's preventive. Okay, you two had to think twice about doing this because that was a big undertaking. Plus, you had your own lives and own jobs, right?
Let me tell you, Rose called me every Friday and said, what did you do about your nonprofit? What congressperson have you called about this bill? I don't even know a congressperson. I mean, I had a full-time job.
Yeah.
But I just cannot give her enough credit. Everybody needs a Rose in their life, or we need to be somebody's Rose.
Yeah, wow, okay. You completed the nonprofit application, the grant proposals while working full-time jobs. That came through. Okay, the beauty in this is how it works. Okay, opened in 1986, the first nonprofit breast cancer organization of its kind. Explain what the setup was.
It was always that we would do mammograms for, at that time, insurance didn't cover it. So it was $50 a mammogram for those that could afford it, and then it was $0 for those that could not. But that $50 let us support the women who did not. And then we did fundraisers to fill in the gap there.
Yeah, my very first mammogram was at the Rose. And I got to tell you, I will never forget, they saw a little something. She goes, I just want to make sure. And they did, at that time, an ultrasound, which other people weren't necessarily doing. So the Rose has always been cutting edge and ahead of its time. Even other breast centers around the country have based their technology off of what you all were doing.
Oh, yes, and particularly when we got into mobile mammography, I tell you, that was a game changer.
Yeah, explain that to people, what mobile mammography.
So, we're taking mammograms in these huge buses, is what a lot of people call them. We call them coaches, to 45 counties throughout Southeast Texas. And women, when it's convenient, they're going to take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And what we know is the same, if we diagnose a woman who's insured or uninsured on the coach, it's going to be the same low stage of diagnosis. So that's what we need to be doing, is taking it to the women.
Yeah, all right. Women are still having to advocate for themselves.
Yes.
Case in point, Courtney, 2023, just a couple of years ago, you noticed something. What did you notice?
I was in the shower and I noticed a lump in my left breast. And before that, I felt a lump before when I was breastfeeding my daughter back in 2021. And I went to a doctor, told them about it, and they kind of brushed me off and was like, oh, it's probably just a clogged milk duct.
And part of that is because that could happen, you could have a clogged milk duct, but part of that also was your age.
Yes.
You're young.
Yes, ma'am. And so I was nervous, but when she said that, the doctor was like, it was nothing, I was like, okay, it's nothing. So then 2 years later, a year and a half later, I was pregnant with my son. And this time I was like, okay, I'm pregnant, I feel the lump, I need to figure out what's going on. And so I had a midwife here in Houston who referred me to the Rose. I called and they were like, oh, because it's a lot of people that go to the Rose. So I called and they were like, oh, we'll get you an appointment in 3 weeks. And I was like, well, excuse me. I was like, I'm pregnant, I'm 23 weeks pregnant, can I please get an appointment soon? They got me right in 2 days later.
And we know the cancer and pregnancy don't work well together, right?
Exactly.
Things are kind of exacerbated with that. But to her point, she was insistent, and that's the tough part. It's oftentimes, we keep saying, if you find a lump, if you feel something, you go in. And so many women have been either discouraged, or when someone says it's nothing, we run and go, it's nothing, right? Because we want it to be nothing. What kept you insisting?
I was thinking about my baby, the baby I was pregnant with, and my baby that was only 1.5. And I was just nervous, right? Because it was a lump. I didn't know what to feel, how to feel. And then once I got in with the Rose, it's funny that you said the ultrasound thing, because that's exactly what happened with me. They gave me an ultrasound, and right away they saw it, and right away they scheduled my biopsy.
Instead of guessing that maybe it's nothing, they went ahead, because this is what you do. All right, schedule your biopsy, and when you hear the words, you have breast cancer.
Oh.
And you're pregnant.
Yeah, it was, I'm getting teary-eyed right now. It was the scariest moment. The whole time I kept thinking, God, just don't let me die, just don't let me die. Because, you hear breast cancer, and you're pregnant, it's a lot. You're growing a baby, and you're trying to cover yourself.
And so then figure out how to balance treatment and things.
Exactly.
Right?
I never knew that you could go through chemo while pregnant. And so I did 4 rounds of chemotherapy while pregnant with my son, and I ended up having to see a specialist as well to make sure he was fine. So it was a lot of appointments.
Yeah, a lot of appointments. But here's the thing, Dorothy. It's one thing to be told you have breast cancer, good luck. The Rose doesn't do that.
No, we have a patient navigation department that's her whole job, is to take care of women after they're diagnosed. And at that time, Courtney had lots of issues with insurance, and then suddenly didn't have insurance, and so we were able to get her on the state program. And you know, her chance of surviving was all wrapped up in her. I want to be real clear. She was determined, but you can be determined and not have access to treatment.
There's the leading the horse to
matter.
water, and if you can't get them to the water, then when you get them to the water, make them drink the water, right?
Yeah. And we all knew Courtney's story. She became a real hero in our little world, because she'd walk through and everybody would say, "Courtney's here," and then we'd go.
Courtney and her baby. Yeah. Oh wow. So Dorothy, in your 40 years, there's a lot that has changed. Give me the stuff that you are most excited about, and then the stuff that we still need to work on.
Imaging has changed, and it is so much more exact
3D
these
now,
days.
right?
3D. You cannot imagine the difference that made. And it's so important that women understand it. 3D does make a difference. We have so many different technologies now to identify this. We have different treatment. What we don't have is access to care. If anyone had told me that many years ago we'd still be around and still be needed, I would have said no. We would have found a cure for breast cancer, or we'd have a better way of taking care of the uninsured, and we don't. So, you know, until that access to care issue is resolved, we're still back in the 80s.
Because we're lucky to have the Rose here, but you're packed, and we need roses everywhere.
Everywhere.
Right? It just needs to be the way it happens. What would your advice be to any woman, especially somebody who's young, when you feel something, to advocate? Because you're younger than the prescribed time to get a mammogram, right?
Yes.
And so the thing is, a lot of times we dismiss that and go, well, it can't be that. Or if it doesn't, or if we don't have family history, we think it's just not that. But what would you have to say to any woman?
Something that I started saying after this was like, feel something, say something, and just be resilient. I've never, before this, I was like, okay, whatever. But since this diagnosis, I walk in the room and I'm like, hey, this needs to be done. This is what I'm feeling. You have to advocate for yourself, because if you don't, then who will?
Yeah, you're like, that is a hangnail,
say-
but I want you to look and make sure that this hangnail is not something else, right?
Yes,
But yeah,
ma'am.
because you have to be your own best advocate. I want to end by saying, Dorothy, I adore you. I love you. You and Dr. Melillo, when I first met you too, when I first moved here to Houston, like I said, my first mammogram was there, and my girls have gone there ever since. But thank you for not giving up, and thank you for stepping out, which had to be a tough situation, because as you said, you had your own life going on, and then to step out on behalf of a million women. And when I said earlier, what you're retiring, but the work you did lives on forever, it's true, because your baby wouldn't be here if not for, right? And how many babies would not have been here, and the next generations would not have been here if not for. Thank you so much. And I'm not done with you yet. I'm going to celebrate you in some other ways. All right. All right.
Thank you, Deborah.
And baby's doing fine?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, remember, when you self-pay or use your insurance to get a mammogram through the Rose, you help clear the way for uninsured women to access potentially life-saving imaging and services. You can visit therose.org for more information.